Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdsson of World Alternative Media here, and I have recently done videos on private property and the issues stemming from government overreach, stealing people's private property. And you know, something I've been seeing going around quite a bit lately is a video that actually goes back to 2012. A lot of people are framing it as new. Oregon man sued for collecting rainwater sparks nationwide debate, but indeed it is actually from 2012. But I wanted to kind of go over it because it's also happening in Canada, and there's more to it than that. The insane amounts of permits that you need just to have like a tree house on your property or build a house or have any sort of title, it's insane. You don't actually own your property, and we are entering into a world where this is abundantly obvious. So I wanted to go into the news report from 2012, what people are talking about it, the so-called debunking article by the Associated Press with their fact-checking, which of course it actually just raises more questions, and how many other states have these insane rules. There are many things that it's precedent-setting. But before we get into this, I urge people to check those links below. One of them being actually Patreon, because we did a 1 hour deep dive on our recent live show last Sunday called You Will Own Nothing, going into the insane amounts of information that leads to us essentially not owning anything. We already are basically being pushed out of the market from PlayStation 5s, essentially saying, oh, you can't have physical discs anymore. They're normalizing us down to the detail of your own home property, BlackRock, money, everything across the board in this technocratic approach. So if you missed our show, every Sunday, 2 p.m. PST on Rumble, we go live. But I also, the full replays are available over on Patreon and Subscribestar if you pledge $5 a month or more. So please do that. We need your help because we are obviously algorithmically suppressed badly. Also, heavensharvest.com. This is an actual solution to this problem so that you aren't left behind. You aren't forced to inject it. You aren't forced to do things you don't want to do under the basis of not having food because the grocery stores will run out because it's all by design. If you go to heavensharvest.com/wham, you will get amazing deals like 25% off on long-term storable food that's non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, books on how to get started. If you want that 25% off, you need to use code WHAM, W-A-M. So go and check that out at the links below. It's a no-brainer. Get prepared for what comes next. And as always, my friends, make sure to hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit the subscribe button if you have not yet already. Take the solution seriously. Now let's get into this. So Tara Bull posted this on X, and people are mistaking it for something new. It isn't new, but it also has a lot of context that I need to kind of go over. There is nuance to this. Let's listen to this original report.
Oregon man was convicted and sent to jail for collecting and using rainwater on his own property, sued by the state for theft. Rancher Gary Harrington built 3 large reservoirs on his own land to collect rainwater and snowmelt. He claimed the water was primarily for fire protection reserves and for providing water to wildlife. But the state called it theft and prosecuted Gary. A municipal code stipulates that all water within city limits, including precipitation, is part of the public water supply. The city requested the court order the removal of his collection system and impose a fine. Despite Harrington's repeated appeals, arguing, the water fell on my land, I'm not selling it. I'm simply using it on my own property. The court ultimately rejected his claims. Harrington was found guilty on multiple charges, including unlawful appropriation of state water resources. He was sentenced to 30 days in jail and fined over $1,500. The incident sparked intense backlash. Residents said it was simply tyranny. If a person cannot own the rain that falls on their own land, what do they actually own?
Now, there's some nuance to this. It isn't exactly how it's reported here, but it actually leads to the same point that the government essentially thinks that they own the water, though they'll claim that, oh, it's owned by the public. However, despite it being owned by the public, you can't do these things with water. And the regulations around it are absolutely absurd. So we're going to go into this a little bit. I want to point out that there's 2 reasons in the past that they have claimed that you can't store rainwater on your property or collect rainwater. And there's multiple states where it actually is illegal. Oregon actually isn't one of them. But what they say is that if you store that rainwater, one, if you drink it yourself, it could have parasites in it. You could get sick, like you can't take care of yourself. Obviously, this is part of the dependence mechanism. They don't want people to be able to take care of themselves. They have to take care of everyone. They create problems. They come in as a solutions. Oh, thank you, government. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking care of me, mommy and daddy, government. Thank you. You know what? Can you tie my shoelace also? Because God forbid I trip over it and fall. We'll have to mandate that someday, because all things are dangerous in life because life is dangerous. That's just reality. And falling for no line really in the sand on this. Just obviously you have to, if you don't want to be inconsistent, you have to cover all issues on this subject. Everything could be dangerous, therefore government must regulate everything, and they want to. The other reason that they say that you can't collect it is because of the watershed, and it could affect the land in the surrounding areas. Now, this is a really stupid notion because, okay, this guy actually specifically collected an enormous amount of water, and it still was, the difference was negligible versus the overall rainfall in the area. I reported on this, I think, for the first time in 2013, this subject, and this story. I remember when it came out. I did some videos on it at the time, and I'm just looking back on it now, and I wanted to do something on it now because it's so pertinent to what we're seeing today with the attack on private property on another level, and basically them saying in the future you won't have money and you won't have a home and you won't have any property and you will own nothing and you'll be happy, as they say. So one of the things I wanted to go into here was, so this guy got jail time. It's all true, but there was some, misconception, and I don't like these fact checkers. They're usually run by organizations that their whole point is to underhand any person that tries to criticize the establishment. Now, what actually happened, it says, Gary Harrington has collected nearly 13 million gallons of water in his reservoirs, one of which was pictured below. So he wasn't just holding it in small containers. He was doing it in a big way. Still, shouldn't matter. It says that's enough to fill 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. But 2 weeks ago, he was found guilty of breaking the 1925 Oregon law against private water collection. He was sentenced to 30 days in jail and issued a $1,500 fine. Eagle Point is a city in Jackson County, Oregon. Below is a screenshot comparison between pictures in the misleading post and the photo in the AOL report. The Oregon Department of Justice published a press release about the case on July 27th, 2012 here. We have a few articles up regarding that here and there. But okay, according to the press release, Harrington stored and used water illegally by placing dams across channels on his property and preventing the flow of water out of these artificial reservoirs without obtaining a water right permit. The height of each dam varies. 2 dams stand about 10 feet tall, 3 meters, and the third stands about 20 feet tall, 6 meters. It also said these man-made reservoirs feature boat docks, boats, and were stocked by Harrington with trout and bluegill for recreational fishing. It's his property. Rainwater is not property of the state, as claimed in the misleading post. The Oregon Water Law Section 537.110, page 44, stipulated that all water within the state from all sources of water supply belongs to the public, except for how you use it on your property, whether you want reservoirs, whether you put some fish in it to ensure that you and your family have, a replicating food source. What the hell do they care? Oh, well, building code, building code. I studied the building code in school, and the building code is insane. There's many things in there that you go, okay, well, obviously, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Obviously, low-bearing walls shouldn't, have things going through it. Okay, we need good piling. We have to look at the soil around there. Okay, fine. We need control joints in the floors and all that. Okay, fine, sure. We need water protection, all that kind of stuff. Sure. But then they go, but also you must have a window exactly this size for an overweight person to fit through at this time, in case there's a fire in that room. And then, you have to have a ceiling a certain, size and a room a certain size and door handles and everything down to the detail of every basic thing in your home being so overly regulated that almost everything could be shut down. And we will show you an example of that right away here shortly. But I want to continue with the water issue for a moment. They're going to say, oh, well, it's against code to have fish on your property and have this, or you need a permit for that. And by the way, those permits override other permits, which mean those permits are now thrown out. So in order to have that one work, you have to get rid of these other things, and you have to divide lines into property, and it's insane. You don't own that property. This is the most insane thing about all this, is like, you don't own it. So like they say, oh, this guy, he went against some crazy codes. He didn't just collect rainwater, because he's the only person on record, officially speaking, that got arrested for this. So other people have been charged. And they say, well, it's an extreme case. And obviously this guy's crazy. Why would he want to have sustainability on your land? Keyword, your land. So what's the deal? Okay. So this debunking article doesn't really get to the point here. It basically just backs up what I'm saying, because they think, oh, well, but this is crazy. Why would you ever do these things? Well, now I support the guy even more. He's trying to be sustainable on his property. Who owns rain when government regulation loses common sense? There are many places in the United States that have bans on the collection of rainwater. Let's look at an example here from thefw.com. State laws on rainwater harvesting leave homeowners puzzled. Not every state is cool with you filling up jugs and barrels with rainwater. Here's a look at the states that are cracking down on residents looking for free water. And by the way, some places actually advocate for it. So there's a lot of back and forth there. But the U.S. suffered through its fourth hottest summer on record in 2004, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. This year hasn't been much better. So when was this put out? This was put out... Well, it doesn't say, but I do know, I just did a video on this, by the way. We're seeing a super El Nino potentially incoming this year, and there's a lot of talk about supply chain disruptions, water, etc. But anyway, it says here, let me get back to the article I was on. The extreme heat has meant lawns and gardens need extra water all summer long. For some homeowners, collecting rainwater can be a cost-efficient way of keeping their properties green. Today's homeowners noted that many use the water for their gardens, potted plants, and even the entire yards if the area has seen a period of heavy rain. And while it may be great for your yard, it doesn't necessarily mean it's great for you and your family to drink. Okay, but there are ways to treat that, obviously, if we're not that dumb here. I mean, people have been drinking water since the beginning of man. The CDC says the rainwater could wash bacteria and other contaminants into your collection container, which can lead to all kinds of illnesses, not to mention particles in the air are entering the rain before it even lands on your roof. Okay, yes, true. Well, some of that from the government spraying in the sky. And by the way, oh, well, you can't drink that water. It's dangerous. But Flint, Michigan, anybody? Flint, Michigan? Hydrofluorosilicic acid, fluoride that they're putting in the water also? What about that? Oh, but they're here to protect you. And when they endanger you, it doesn't count. Ah, I see. States where it's illegal to collect rainwater. There are several states where there is absolutely no regulation on collecting rainwater. Some states include Michigan, Indiana, New Jersey, and New York actually encourage it. New Jersey, for example, often offers a rebate program to some residents for their rainwater collection efforts. Unfortunately, there are some states where residents need to know their local laws before filling up a barrel. According to today's homeowner, states put regulations in place for reasons that include the climate of the area and something called historical water rights, which are guidelines that have been established for several years before any local droughts or water scarcity issues. The following states have regulations in place that limit or prohibit rainwater collection. Okay. Arkansas, California, of course, California, Colorado, Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, Louisiana, Nevada, North Carolina, Ohio, Oregon, Texas, Utah, Virginia, Washington. Now, Oregon actually has some leeway on that, surprisingly, despite them being in the headlines for this issue. So, of course, there are ridiculous restrictions on this. I like how they say here are the pets banned in each state. It reminds me of the cat licenses and the TV licenses. You don't own anything, my friends. Oh, and if you buy something now on Amazon Prime and it says buy, you don't own that either. You don't get any physical copy, and they can take it away at any point. So it's kind of fraudulent to say buy, isn't it? Now, we have these older articles from Canada. This is a 2016 article, man fined $99,000 in a legal dam case. So basically, They said he was interviewing with a water course. The Ministry of Natural Resources says Kevin Strong of Centre Hastings, Ontario, north of Belleville, was fined $90,000 for constructing an unauthorized dam and $9,000 for interfering with a water course at Moreland Lake near Ivanhoe, Ontario. He was also ordered to do restoration work. The court heard Strong built a dam and pond on the property next to the lake between January 20th and May 2013. You know, this kind of reminds me of when we saw people filling up potholes and then they were arrested and forced to undo the fixing of those potholes. Or, you know, when people would plant flowers, you know, in cities downtown in the grass and they weren't invasive, nothing like that. And then they forced them to pull it out because how dare anyone do something efficiently? The government has to steal your money. And in places like Canada, tax you 65% overall if you include sales taxes, all that on top of eco taxes, all that on top of the income tax. But after all of that is said and done, what happens? Oh, well, we're going to pay millions and millions of dollars with your stolen money to put a few badly planted flowers in that die right away. But if you do it, it's bad. See, the hypocrisy is absolutely absurd. Now, this guy, it was his property. He built a dam on it. He didn't cut off like a city or a region or anything from water flow. It was just what was flowing through his property already. But nope, not allowed it. This one was interesting. It was more successful end to the story. This is from July 29th, 1999, so 27 years ago. Farmer fined $1 in drainage case, but the issue was that he was originally facing jail and a $10,000 fine in Manitoba, Canada. He was convicted in that spring of illegally draining water from land he works near Ninga, Manitoba. He appeared in court, Queen's Bench in Brandon, Manitoba, for sentencing July 22nd. Judge John Menzies imposes a fine of $1. That's cool. But the issue is with a lot of these, it's on their land. They're allowing water to flow that's already on their land into different parts of their land, perhaps into their farmland, to maintain sustainability of said farm. And they're told they can't do that because it's affecting other places. It's affecting the watershed, as they say. And this is complete bullshit. There's no. Again, the difference is negligible if you take water in that amount on your own property versus how much water is actually coming down from the sky. It's absurd. And, I find it interesting that so many people for example, on the left, it's all a paradigm, but people on the left will go, oh, well, we need to go after the CEO of Nestle because he said human beings don't have a right to water and he wants to own all the water and patent the water. That's all insane. Keyword there, patent the water. Patents are what? A system that goes through the state so that the state licenses you to own something. So very important to point that major detail out. So people get mad over the CEO and they'll run a crusade against him. And look, the guy's clearly evil or something. I don't know who says things like this. But then we'll turn a blind eye and say, oh, crazy right-wing Republicans, whatever, for wanting to collect rainwater on their farm. They should be fined. They should be imprisoned. Like, what is wrong with people? Do people not see the hypocrisy? The biggest form of monopoly corporation is a state. It's essentially a mafia. And, I'll give you another example of how much the state is a mafia that actually has no logic to it and it isn't keeping anyone safe. Check out this clip I saw on Facebook a few days ago. I wanted to bring it up because I thought it was very interesting and really shows you the annoyance of private property. It's from Southern Adventures on YouTube. Check this out. Just absolutely insane.
Hey, so the government won't let me live in this treehouse that I spent the last 4 years building, and the reason is incredibly stupid. As we already established, the county said I could build a treehouse, and the county seats changed, and the new guy said, hey, no, never mind, you need a permit for that, and that turned into like a 1.5-year battle, and they didn't want to give us a permit, and when they finally did give us a permit, they said, okay, fine, you can build it, but you need to make it bigger, up to 1,200 square feet, to meet our minimum size requirements, so we can tax you more. So we got the permit, and now there's a new problem. Now they say that my parents cannot build a house on the same property, which is over 100 acres, by the way, because now the treehouse is the primary residence, so we can't do another house. So we meet with the county again, and we're like, hey, so the treehouse is still only 750 square feet. We have not made it bigger, which means it meets your size requirements for an accessory structure, so we should still be able to build a main house over there. Nope. That's impossible. Why is that impossible? Well, because our ordinance strictly prohibits building the accessory structure before the main house, because then people just never build the main house. Yeah, but we're actually trying to build the main house, like right now. We're trying to build it, but you're saying no. So we go in circles and circles, and they're just like, sorry, it's impossible. You cannot build another house on the property. So my dad's like, well, can we just apply for a variance? And he's like, yeah, you can, but they'll definitely deny it. And then I found a loophole. I said to him, why don't we just divide the property on paper, draw an invisible line down the middle, and then my parents can pull a permit for this property, build their main house, and when they finish, we can reassemble the properties and the treehouse becomes an accessory structure to the main house. Well, yeah, I guess that could work, but you can't get a certificate of occupancy for your treehouse until your parents' house is finished, which means I can't live in it, because in 2026, you need the government's permission to live in a house that you built. So we had to pay surveyors thousands of dollars to draw invisible lines across the property so that my parents can build on the exact same property, and then when they finish, we will pay them thousands more dollars to erase the invisible lines and put the properties back together. Otherwise, I have to nearly double the size of the treehouse. So in summary, I can't live in the treehouse because it's an illegal structure and it's not big enough. But if I make it bigger, then it's okay. But also now it's too big, so now my parents can't build a house over here. But if I draw an invisible line here, then they can build a house over here. But I still have to make the treehouse bigger. Unless I erase the invisible line after my parents' house is done, then the treehouse is okay. But I still can't live in it until my parents' house is done because you can't build the accessory structure first according to the city ordinance, even though it's already done. So I guess my wife and I will just keep living in this leaky, mold-infested camper. And what makes this even more interesting is that they tried to jack up the property tax bill this year because they claimed that the treehouse was done and that we were living in it. But we also don't have a CO and we're not allowed to live in it. So which is it? Make it make sense. I'll pay the freaking increased property tax if I can just live in my stupid house. The comments are gonna say, bro, just live in it anyway. How will they know? All that being said, my hope is that when my parents actually break ground, which should be in the next couple of months, I can convince them to give me the CO and I can actually move in. I feel like that's a perfectly reasonable request. We're not trying to cheat the system. We're not trying to work around the rules. We've got a main house and an accessory house. That's all we're trying to do here. But they're making us go run around in circles and waste a ton of money on invisible lines. Anyway, stay tuned to see how this story develops.
I have to say, we're not trying to get around the rules, but can you blame anyone for trying to get around the rules when these are the rules? I mean, it's so insane. I mean, again, it's further evidence you don't own that property. You don't own that property. You don't own any of it. And then, increased property taxes on top of all that. That is just like they're insulting you. They're mocking you. They're building a system purposely to be inconvenient and almost impossible to deal with so that you hand off all the responsibilities to the people that could deal with the red tape, like the major corporations like BlackRock, so they could deal with all of it. And God forbid you do anything to be self-sustainable in life, which is the basis of humanity and freedom itself. And you want to build something on your property and then, but it gets in the way of this permit and this allowance. Like, was I the only one that was watching that and going crazy? Like, you can't hate these people enough. These people hate you. They despise you. They hate the basis of humanity itself. They're evil. They want to extinguish you from mankind. Absolutely sick what people have to deal with on a daily basis. And they say, well, the regulations keep us safe. This is a mob. This is a mafia. Okay, these people don't care about you. In fact, they want to dispose of you in any way, shape, or form possible that is within their legal standing, and they are changing the laws all the time to make it even worse, which we'll get into in a moment. But these people, I had an argument with a guy on my live stream because I did a video on private property, which was different than this, using different stories, and I urge people to check it out again on Patreon, $5 a month. We need the help. But when I'm going into this, at the end of it, it was a 2.5 hour show because we got raided by Patriot Front and all these people on the right. And, usually I'm arguing with people on the left, and now I'm arguing with people on the right because both are inconsistent and both actually end with the same, so-called solutions, quote unquote, in different ways, with different excuses, with different pretexts, different contexts. And so this guy was going, well, if you want to, like, the government, we need the government to keep people safe from chaos. And I'm like, but the chaos agents are the government. And then he's like, oh, what, you're going to be self-sustainable and, grow your own food and have all this stuff at your home? What happens when the government comes and steals it from you? And I'm like, okay, so you're advocating that we have to support the government. The government is great, even though they're a bunch of child predator, mass murdering psychopaths that create the problems they come in as a solution for. This is why I'm a voluntarist, my friends. And this guy says, well, we need all of that because if we don't, there's chaos, but there's chaos anyway, and they're creating the chaos. And he says, we have to vote or you don't have a right to complain, but people that are voting are literally the people voting for the system that enslaves us, left or right, doesn't matter, 51% ruling the 49%, but at the end of the day, the deep state that's much further below all that, or above all that. And then he says, but if you, What, you're just gonna like withdraw from the system and like build your own and grow your own and you know, defend yourself and on your own property? They're just gonna come and take that, he says. And I went, so what you're saying is you support those people? Yes, that could be happening. But what you're saying is you support those people, despite the fact that if you try to escape them, they will try to extort you, steal from you, kill you, do whatever they. And he says for that reason, it's pointless to ever try to be self-sustainable. It's like, that is the biggest mental gymnastic argument I've ever heard. You're right, they could go do that. Why are we supporting that system then? Why does that mean that we should support that system more? Please give me a good argument for that. I can't find one. Being a cucked mommy and daddy government is not the solution to these problems. And of course, they will just keep piling it on as we continue to normalize ourselves, be demoralized, and, you know, sit on our hands apathetically to this by saying, oh, maybe I'll vote. I'll put out a vote for someone else. Like, when has that ever worked since ancient Greece? So, oh, but, you know, they might come after your stuff if you don't support them and you don't. So I'm being extorted. This is Stockholm Syndrome. This is absolute Stockholm Syndrome. And people that are on the right, that are usually more conservative, are now, in many cases, falling prey to this ideology, mostly out of just one, the social construct. They want to be among a group that agrees with them, and so that they feel like they're not alone, which is a psychological impact of a lot of this stuff, that the hive mind, all that kind of stuff, which goes for the left as well. They don't necessarily have to agree with things. It's inconsistent. They know it, but they don't want to argue it because they prefer to just be in a place where they can agree with people. And the other part of it is that people just grew up with the system, and they were born into the system, and they can never see outside of that system because they can't imagine a world outside of that system. Much like a kid that, you know, these horrible cases of parents that chain up their kids in their basements and do horrible things their whole life, and they never get to see the outside sun, and then they fall into a Stockholm Syndrome dependence on them. This is exactly what we're dealing with here. So this idea that, oh, well, if we don't support the system, like, they're going to come after us anyway. So what, support it more? That's the answer? What the hell are people talking about? Seriously. Absolutely, blatantly absurd. And this comes as people like Elon Musk is claiming that money won't exist in the future and that he won't have to work. Yuval Noah Harari from the World Economic Forum once said that he dreams of a world placated on drugs, playing video games, basically owning nothing. You will be happy. Elon Musk and Sam Altman are both the main people developing AI at the same time as they both say that AI is going to destroy humanity. At the same time as they both say it'll destroy most employment, but don't worry, you won't need to have a job. You'll be on credits. Oh, and Elon Musk is pushing X money forward, which is owned through the social credit platform X, which is owned by XAI, which has Pentagon contracts. Shocking. Oh, and he's building the new internet, Starlink, which is going to be the new hive mind, which eventually you'll need to show ID to get on, as they advocate for using ID to access almost any websites across the board and even sign into your computer, with some new rules being pushed by Congress. My goodness, my friends. If this isn't a blatant, obvious example of how they're destroying private property so that you go on your knees and depend on the new system and take the ration food and take the social credit scores and live in your 15-minute cities, I don't know what is. Meanwhile, they have the surveillance system being put up absolutely everywhere to ensure this happens, with flock cameras, which I'll go into in another video eventually. I know people have been asking me, do something on the flock cameras. I want to. I want to do something big on it, but I need to really gather everything that I have and that I can on this, because there's so much nuance to this, and most people just jump on getting the story out quick. I'm literally doing a video on something that happened in 2012 right now. So what I'm saying is, like, they're building out that surveillance system. They extended FISA 702, warrantless surveillance. They have facial recognition, license plate readers on all the highways now outside of just Flock. The Flock has just been suspended in LA temporarily due to cops using it to stalk people, etc. But Trump has pushed the new AI governance rules, AI militarism, Palantir technology. The list goes on. Digital IDs. Oh, my goodness. I mean, what? Am I going to go into this a billion times more? People know. We did a video recently on Canada's new internet kill switch. We did videos on the Internet ID exposed. I urge people to look at all of those videos because they are incredibly important. But alas, I've done thousands upon thousands upon thousands of videos on this subject. It just keeps getting worse. And I thought I'd do a little bump back in time to this because it's being shared as if it's new. It's not new, but it is insane. It tells you everything you need to know about what your so-called rights are, and those rights aren't really existent. You don't have rights. You only have what you defend. That's the only thing that you really have. And it's happening in all these places as they're establishing the digital system. You don't own your property. They're destroying the supply chain with the straight up war moves, with weather catastrophes, with false pandemics, with economic crises, which they created in the first place. They're going after the Panama Canal. I mean, they are going in every way, shape, and form after you to ensure that you have to depend heavily on them. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. So anyway, I appreciate everyone watching today. I wanted to do something quick on this, and it turned into another 30-minute video. Imagine that. I did this as evergreen content because, I knew that this video was probably going to come out several days after I do it. I just wanted to get something done on this because I think it's important, and I see it being shared around a lot. And I've been talking about it for decades now. But I urge people, as real solutions do matter, heavensharvest.com/WAM, W-A-M, for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. This is a no-brainer, my friends. Get prepared so they don't own you later on. Using code WAM, W-A-M, will get you 25% off on this. This is, obviously something people need to do. Again, you can't find quality of products like this. So I urge people to go and check that link in the description and get prepared today so you and your family aren't left behind depending on their injections just in order to get food while you're ratting on your neighbor to be able to maybe eat some actual meat rather than the lab-grown meat that they ration off to you. I also urge you to avoid, obviously, for the digital system, the banking system as much as possible. If all your money's in the bank, you're in trouble. firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/ has to be that exact link. It's in the description of all our videos on Rumble and BitChute and World Alternative Media. There you could avoid the CBDCs to come, the digital IDs to come. You could buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium, hold it in your hands, put it in a vault, or put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system, and schedule an appointment for a free consultation with our friend Mark Gonzalez and get a complimentary investors package there. Just let him know in the comments of the forum that you found him at World Alternative Media or WAM, W-A-M. As we close this off, we could really use and we appreciate any help we can get. Go get funding.com, Patreon, and Subscribestar. We need your help. The algorithm is suppressing us for this digital future because we're consistent and tell the truth and don't take sides of the political paradigm, which is very dangerous to the establishment's overall agenda, which is a war on humanity itself and the self-sustainability of humanity. If you pledge $5 a month or more on Patreon or Subscribestar, you will get those full replays of those live shows every Sunday at 2 p.m. PST. Only way to watch it after the fact is over on Patreon and Subscribestar. We appreciate your help greatly, my friends. We have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. We have a Bitcoin address that you can scan on the screen or check out in the description below in text form. And we have a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in if you please, including privacy coins. We have a Teespring store with a bunch of merchandise, and as always, my friends, you can find us on Telegram, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson, and on the Bad Guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where, of course, we're banned. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. As always, my friends, live freely, live by example. That's what it's all about. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.